So I'm here with Graeme Stirling. We're supposed to talk about racism today, and you've done a study or done some research on racism, how people think about cultural stereotypes and so. Can you present your work somehow?
Along those lines, yes. I did a piece for our student magazine recently on the Reva project.
Okay.
And the anger that this has caused in the Swedish press.
The Reva project, what is that for someone who's not introduced to it?
It is an abbreviation for a very long Swedish word, which would translate roughly to effective execution of policy.
Okay.
This is a part funded by the European Return Fund, which is a project by the European Union intended to increase detection and deportation of illegal immigrants.
Okay.
And in Sweden, the most notorious aspect of this has been stop and search checks performed by the police in Stockholm, mostly in metro stations, where they've been accused of racial profiling.
Okay. The Swedish foreign minister is in trouble because of this now. Is it something that you've heard of?
No, it's not.
But the Swedish migration minister, is it?
I'm not sure.
Okay. Have you ever witnessed this sort of racism yourself?
No, I haven't. Although I haven't spent a lot of time in Stockholm. I'm not sure how widespread this has been.
But you've been studying in other parts of Europe. In
Yes.
Poland, did you witness anything like this there?
Well, they have much smaller immigrant communities in that part of Europe. It's very rare to see someone who doesn't fit in, at least in terms of their appearance. So no.
But Sweden's at the moment experiencing quite large problems with illegal immigrants. Why do you think that is?
Why do I think that
Yeah.
is? I'm not really very familiar with Swedish immigration policy, so I'm not very sure, but I think the issue stems from cases of refugees and how exactly they are classified in the intake system. I'm not sure how that works, how you'd apply for asylum in this country. But according to some reports I've read, there have been large numbers of, for example, Christian Iraqi refugees coming to Sweden who have been denied refugee status by the Swedish government, who have allegedly claimed that they are not at risk in their home country and have deported them back. So I believe somewhere there lies the root of the problem.
Okay. But why do you want to come to Sweden? What tempts them to get here, so to say?
I have no idea.
Is it the healthcare? Is it the free education, free elections, democracy, or?
I would imagine it's something to do with the reputation of the intake system, which maybe they've been led to believe is quite liberal and quite welcoming, which may have been the case previously or may still be the case, because this is a country with quite a large immigrant community, which I believe has grown quite rapidly in quite a short space of time, which may also be related to the way they are now treating incoming refugees. This probably has a lot to do with figures and quotas and political agendas rather than individual humanitarian welfare, which just isn't realistic.
Okay. But how do you find Sweden this far? Because you lived there for it's half a year, is it more 7 months, something?
8 months roughly, yeah.
Okay. But how do you find Sweden this far?
I haven't witnessed any incidences of racism so far. I believe they occur. Is quite a large immigrant population, although I've been told that Örebro is a particular case for that. But it's something I'm used to, because it's the same at home. It's quite cosmopolitan. We've had large groups of people of different backgrounds for a very long time, and nobody really notices. It's just a normal part of the way of life here. I think maybe the attitude here is still a little different because it's a bit more recent. So I would not be surprised if I encounter some sort of racially motivated incident, but so far I haven't.
Because in Sweden at the moment there's large racism growing with the racist parties and the right populist parties. But you've done some research on these sort of parties before.
Yeah, I looked extensively at the situation in Hungary when I did my first degree, right-wing parties getting very, very popular there. Greece as well, the Golden Dawn, I believe they're called, they're doing very well at the moment. Mainly to do with the economic situation, which is fully in line with all the academic literature on what is conducive to populist fascist politics, which is what's happening in Greece. In Hungary, I believe that it is more to do with the immigrant populace. They have a very large community of Roma who are very, very unpopular, and the main right-wing party there, who are now the third largest party in the country, with several seats in the European Parliament, doing very well. We're in quite a lot of trouble with the international press for their promotion of the term gypsy crime as a classification of crime committed by Roma migrants.
Interesting.
Which they claim is not racist in any way.
But in Hungary they're using uniforms, and like old SS uniforms, or...
Yes, they did have a paramilitary organisation as a wing of the party, but it was banned. I believe they're not allowed to demonstrate in their uniforms anymore. They were...
Why did they start using the uniforms? Do you know that?
I have no idea. They were accused of neo-Nazi behaviour, and as far as I know, the group is now not allowed to meet or parade itself. However, the party still exists, just without this sort of pseudo-paramilitary wing.
But these right-wing populist wings, they're all over Europe at the moment. Why do you think that is?
Well, it's a combination of the economic situation, all this recession, I don't want to say credit crunch, not a fan of the term, all that sort of thing, and presumably an increase in immigration also, which has to do, I suppose, with conflicts in the Middle East and Africa and things like that. I think the two together, I mean, individually, both of either one of those can be very conducive to this sort of political climate. They encourage people to be very culturally defensive. And if you have both of them at once, then it's inevitable that this kind of thing is going to happen. So, yeah, tricky thing to deal with.
But is there some sort of connection between these right winds and the illegal immigrants? Some of the people flee from like Hungary, for instance, with the gypsy crimes. Is there some connection there between?
I don't think so, no. Because I don't think any of them are. I don't think any of them are trying to. At least thus far, none of them are leaving the European countries where they're facing this sort of thing. Most of them arrive as a result of other conflicts. But as far as I'm aware, the situation with the right-wing parties has not reached the point where immigrant communities actually feel the need to flee. That might happen, perhaps. Places like Greece, for example, it seems to be becoming a pretty serious atmosphere, but I don't think it's happened yet.
Örebro is experiencing quite vast problems with illegal immigrants at the moment, because it's crammed up with beggars in the center of town.
Yes.
Have you thought about this before?
Not really, no. I would imagine it might be somewhere on someone's political agenda, but following this, I mean, with this whole Reva thing, the Swedish people, at least the majority of Swedish people, have made it obvious that they're not okay with what they see as racial profiling or discrimination to any extent. So, I mean, it's anyone's guess how these sort of things should be addressed. Not really sure what should be done. Not an expert in the issue. Don't know how much of a problem it is. But it's pretty obvious that there aren't going to be any heavy-handed strategies being used.
In your study you've done, have you been able to draw any sort of conclusions in it of things that get obvious when you study it more deep? Or
one thing I did note in the paper on the Hungarian party was that the international press criticism of the right wing was very, very aggressive. It's a little bit like Dawkins type characters, seen of some branches of the atheist movement which protest religious intolerance whilst themselves being very intolerant of the religious community. Similarly, the international press were ended up discrediting themselves to quite an extent by they obviously thought that right-wingers, so-called neo-Nazis, racist parties are quite an easy target, so rather than building any constructive criticism, we'll just point this out, and sort of some of the articles bordered on verbal abuse. And there was an article, Der Spiegel in Germany got in quite a lot of trouble because they printed an article about this Hungarian party, and they printed a photograph. The title of the article, no, actually, that was something else. Sorry, they printed a photograph in the lead of the article with a picture of a white guy with the back of his head turned, who had an SS insignia tattooed on the back of his head.
Okay.
And this photo was later revealed.
In Hungary, that is.
Well, so they claimed, or implied, implied by its placement in the article, but this was later revealed to have been taken at a neo-Nazi rally in Germany and was completely unrelated. And the party responded with a very long, very eloquent sort of essay type article under the title, "Since when were nationalists just idiots with tattoos in the backs of their heads," or something. So basically it served to discredit the journalists who should be able to deal with this sort of thing quite easily, and made the party more popular, which is one example of how they've reached the stage they've reached in quite a short time.
But the growth of this neo-Nazi movement, it's huge at the moment. Hungary, for instance, but also in the US, there's vast problems with this neo-Nazi movement. Why do you think that is? There's such a race in this.
Well, we're just getting into sort of subjective opinion here, but I think in the case of the US, it's very directly related to the conflict in the Middle East, because large parts of the political community there encourage their voters to adopt an us versus them approach, which can lead to this sort of behaviour, create intolerance domestically as well as internationally. I imagine that is the main cause. But it varies a lot from country to country. As far as I know, the likes of the BNP in the UK aren't really growing at a particularly rapid rate, but I'm not entirely sure. They have been legislated against by the government on a few occasions. Unless it's a popular myth, I believe BNP party members aren't allowed to join the police, for example. And they have now been obligated to allow non-white members to join, which rather goes against their ethos.
There's also this problem in Greece, where this football player did a German salute. Is it the schools probably that don't teach enough of this?
I enjoyed reading about that this morning. Yeah, his the icing on the cake is that his team coach is German, and the coach has stated to the press that he believes 100% that Georgios was not aware of the meaning of this salute, and that it was therefore not malicious. He suggested that he probably saw it on the internet, thought it looked pretty cool, and decided to try it out. So yeah, this has been the subject of a lot of debate, even in the last 24 hours, about whether or not someone in their 20s growing up in Europe can really not be aware of Nazi imagery, which seems very doubtful, but that is the whole basis of his defence, that he had no idea what it signified.
Okay.
Obviously, the fact that it's a Greek individual in the current climate doesn't help his case, as the Golden Dawn outfit are doing very well. There's been quite a lot of related violence in the area, and they've been staging street rallies and becoming very popular, so it's going to be difficult for him to argue his case against that backdrop.
I think it's getting time to round off. Is there something more of your study you want to share with us?
I don't believe so, no. But this is something I'm definitely interested in looking into further.
We'll see how this will develop. So, thank you, Mr. Stirling. We have been talking here with Graeme Stirling about his study on racism in Europe, and mostly on illegal immigrants. We will see how this will develop, and maybe we'll meet Mr. Stirling once again. You never know what happens. So that's everything for today. Cheers!